After reading several files of the patients here, I'm starting to become a little concerned. I have this notion that there's some sort of pattern here, but I can't quite define it. I'm especially concerned about the last male patient's claims that he's being shocked or mistreated. We don't do shock therapy here. Shock therapy would actually be a possible treatment for severe unresponsive depression, which is exactly what he has. But we don't do that here. We're reading through the files last night. One girl's transcript leapt out at me. I know it's strongly part of the pattern I'm sensing, but I still can't quite put it together. That sound. Can I have some of that? The coffee. Come on, it's just coffee. Give it to me. All right, I'll tell you, but this better not be a trick, you promise. Where do we want me to start? Okay. It was class, honestly. Yeah, class. Think it's ridiculous that someone like me could have gone to college, you fucking asshole? It's actually how I ended up here. My family's not rich. Bet that didn't surprise you, though. We're not immigrants. Just new to the country and not well off. I was the first one in my family to get into a good college. My older sister screwed around in high school, but I worked my ass off. I figured once I got in, it'd all be set and I can relax. Then I actually got there. Everyone around me seemed so immature, so stupid. They partied all the time. They never studied. They never did their homework. Nothing. Half of them didn't even show up for class. The football players, they didn't even take the exams. I couldn't understand it. Did they have any idea how much college cost? I still don't know. My parents called me about 3 months in. I was taking over the maximum amount of classes because we only had enough money for 3 years between the family and the scholarships I earned. I had to graduate in 3 years, and that was the plan. They told me that my gran was sick. The family was going to spend the money on her health care. I said, fine, that's great because I love my gran. I was in denial for a little there. I thought maybe I'll just get some scholarships. Maybe I can even make this work. Student loans, maybe? The thought of all that debt terrified me. I would never, ever work off the amount of money that they were talking about. My parents always said we did not come here just to live desolate all over again. A month or so out from the end of the first semester, I got an email about a scholarship that was considering me. I thought all my problems were solved. It was a full ride. But the deadline for the essay submission was the next day. I had a test and 4 classes with a large amount of homework, but I could do it. This was important. So I drank some coffee, stayed up late, fell asleep about 5 in the morning. That next day, I was tired and uncomfortable, and I did a little worse off on the test than I wanted to, but I got it all done. I got an email response to my submission that night. They liked my essay. I was so happy until I read that I had just made it into the next pool. The next level required an in-depth analysis of an industry, 30 pages, and it was due in a few days. Had everyone else known about this for months? Other candidates had all the time in the world to finish the paper? Since it was on my mind, I chose the student loan industry. That was probably a mistake. All I learned was how screwed I would be if I didn't get the scholarship. $100,000 or more for 3 or 4 years and no rights, no bankruptcy, no protection. It was all worse than a loan shark deal. And from my neighborhood, I knew how bad loan sharks could be. I hit the coffee hard. A neighbor in the dorms gave me some pills, but I didn't feel good about it. I left them in my backpack. I got maybe 3 hours of sleep a night for the next few days, struggling to get through all my classwork, homework, tests, and then this huge paper. I knew my classwork was suffering, but a few days wouldn't ruin my grades. This scholarship was important. I was at my limit when I submitted that damn paper. Burnt out, exhausted, and fried on a week of caffeine and no sleep. I slept terribly that night, but it was still a breeze through my pained body. I awoke to an email congratulating me on being one of the 5 candidates remaining in the nation. I didn't understand. Had they reviewed all 30 pages overnight? Or had everyone else failed to get it done on time? Maybe that was it. Maybe they only had 5 papers because nobody else had the time to do it. They wanted a graduate level thesis in 2 weeks. I spent that entire day stunned. I couldn't even comprehend the level of work required. And it was getting to be into finals time. I think I almost broke down crying until I realized that I did have a friend in the graduate program. She agreed to meet with me and help me hash out exactly what I needed to do. She had been working on hers for a year. She expressed some skepticism about the scholarship competition I was engaged in, but she said, better go for it. You don't want to end up like me. I've got so many loans, I'll never be out of debt. I struggled to maintain my composure in the response to that. What, so if I fail to write the thesis in 2 weeks, I'll end up with a huge debt for the rest of my life? The pills in my backpack started to make some sense. They made it almost easy, actually. I went to class, studied for finals, and worked on my thesis. I did it all, everything except sleep. Between the pills and the coffee, I felt horrible, but I was awake, and working 24 hours a day was all that mattered. I had to get that scholarship. I had to. I thought I would actually make the deadline. Halfway there, a week in, I could feel my body starting to give up. I hadn't slept well in a week and a half and hadn't slept in 6 days. And there was still another week to go. I went to my neighbor to ask for more pills. He was sick, sniffling, and talking to him filled me with disgust. He seemed so gross, full of snot and spit, and his eyes were all bulgy. I took the pills and got out of there. I started doubling the dose, then I tripled it. I reached a strange plateau of pained awareness. I reached a strange plateau of pained awareness and strained energy that kept me working on everything straight through the next week. I knew that what I was doing was dangerous, but I had to do it. It would be worth it. I was going to win the scholarship. I just knew it. I hit a wall the day before it was due, though. Staring at the massive thesis I produced just a few pages from the end, the most critical portion, the conclusion, all escaping me. I couldn't form the words in my head. I couldn't think the things I needed to type out. I blinked a few times trying to get my head straight. I was on my laptop in the library. I looked around in tired confusion. My dorm room, the library, and class had all become a blur as my days without sleep mended into one. It was night, and the library was quiet. The breathy exhaustion running under my every feeble movement, I suddenly felt uneasy. My own fatigued breath rasped and echoed in my head. That much I'd gotten used to. But now, alone in the library in the middle of the night, I could hear something else breathing. I carefully packed up my laptop and research books, staying as quiet as I could. I saw nothing strange, but I had this hunch that I was really needing to get out of there. I took the back way around the stacks, trying not to be seen. About 4 rows down, I heard a wet, organic smacking sound. My eyes burning from the sheer effort of looking around, I froze. Was there something in the library with me? My ears found it then. As it slurped itself down the aisle a few feet over, I peered around the corner. A strange, fleshy mass pushed itself towards me. Staring, terrified, I tried to figure out what it was. It had these limbs, skin all stretched and flabby, and the whole monstrous thing pulsed with it. This throbbing. It was like disgusting, glistening sack of flesh and plushing organs, textured, sickening, with hair poking out in random spots. That wet smacking sound, the mouth, an orifice into the horrific thing. Bones sticking out from the gummy ridges inside. God, I remember every movement staring at that thing. And then it turned these white, moist protrusions at me, and I knew it could see me. It made a gulping, wheezing sound and moved towards me more quickly. I bolted. Screw it. I'm a little girl, and I ran like hell. What would you do? There was another one in the stairwell. I almost ran straight into it. It made a weird, high-pitched noise and then reached one throbbing limb for me. The skin seemed stretched by stringy veins, pushing something foul through its masses. I ran. I had a knife already, you know. I'm not from a good neighborhood, and it was around then that I knew I might have to use it. These horrible creatures were in the library, and I had to escape at any cost. I had to finish my thesis. Knife held out, I ran down for the front door. Another creature stood by the door. It squealed as I saw it, its middle expanding as it drew in a breath, preparing for some sort of attack, no doubt. Through the glass door outside, I could see a distant campus security uniform. Salvation, or at least help. I slashed the creature across its expanding middle, tearing the spongy flesh open. It seemed to immediately release all sorts of quivering organs, red and brown and purple, and I couldn't help but puke. Tears streaming down my face. I'd never seen anything so disgusting. Leaving the ruptured sack of flesh on the ground, I ran for the doors. I remember that moment. Screaming for help, that uniformed figure came over, approaching me quickly, and it was one of them. I stabbed that one too, sliced it up, and ran to my dorm room. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I was fully awake from the shock, that was for sure. I finished my thesis while covered in blood and submitted it. They came for me maybe an hour later. I can't remember it, but apparently I was sitting there smiling. I hadn't tried to sleep. And then you know the rest. And people tell me that I had an episode. That my filters were fried and that I was just seeing humans the way that they really look. It doesn't make me feel better. I still see tissues and pulsating stringy veins, throbbing organs and loose sack of flesh. When I look, you stay behind that mirror, keep me isolated. I'm still broken. What if I never get better? Keep my family away, keep my gran away. I can't see them like this. God, I'm so tired. Where's the coffee you promised? I can hear you drinking it back there. You give it to me! Going over the poor girl's transcript, I had a vague flash of memory. This girl was a recent admission. I ran to our mailroom and checked the shredded trash. I thought I had seen something. And there it was. I had sent her a letter to this address. It arrived before she did. It hadn't made any sense at the time, and I'd only randomly been the one to open the mail that day, due to the nurse's sick day. Congratulations, the piece said. You're one of the 3 remaining candidates. To qualify for this next round, please submit within 3 weeks a 4,000 page, and the rest of the typed letter was shredded away. I couldn't find the envelope or any relevant name or contact information in the pile of paper. No matter, this was enough. Something was going on, and this was proof enough to start some sort of investigation. Interesting, the chief of medicine told me, reading the pieces. He leaned back in his large leather chair. This does match the story you told me. I think something bigger is going on here, I said. Does it matter? He replied. There's the story, then she's crazy. Doesn't it warrant an investigation? She still sees people as monsters. Still carved up a security officer and a classmate, he replied. So someone played a prank with his scholarship thing, and she's still the one that didn't sleep for weeks and gave herself brain damage. Why aren't you more interested? I asked, growing a little more angry. This is something, at the very least, we have uncovered some sort of dangerous fraud scholarship. That's not our job. I suddenly cued in that he was absolutely not going to help or condone further investigation in any way. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I lied gracefully. He smiled. He liked to be right. On my way out, he said one last thing. I've heard reports that you've been engaging in some odd behavior yourself. Reading files late at night. That sort of thing. Don't get too close to these patients. Don't regard their stories as anything over than fabrications of obsessed minds. Why? I asked. Afraid crazy is contagious? Quite stern, he set his jaw and gave no response. My comment had been flippant, but his grim response gave me pause. I'm now convinced that something more is going on, not just with this latest girl, but with other patients as well. And I'm starting to wonder if we have something to do with it. Update. I'm now certain we are involved in something very, very dark.